Help the government spy or face a fine? That's the dilemma that internet companies could face under proposed legislation. According to the reporting of the Washington Post newspaper, a government task force is pushing for a law that would pressure internet companies to let the government wiretap online communications.
There's two ways that the FBI can capture keystrokes on a computer. One is by calling the internet service provider and asking for a favor, basically persuading the internet service provider to let them tap in. Nobody will know about it, and the government will give you immunity if the person whose keystrokes we capture finds out you let us do that. This is what happened in the Bush administration until our colleagues in the media revealed this, and then the government stopped. The other way the FBI can get information is by going to a judge, presenting evidence of probable cause of crime. This is what the Fourth Amendment requires, getting an order from the judge. Both ways require the cooperation of the internet provider. In the first way, the provider has to say, all right, we'll let you in, we'll look the other way. In the second way, the provider has to come on over and we'll let you in. Both ways require the input of the service provider to connect the FBI to the internet, which the FBI says it can't do on its own. Now, what does the FBI want? The FBI wants to be able to connect to the internet without going to the service provider from its own FBI office, a switch that they can press when they want to capture the keystrokes on Shepard Smith or Jonathan Hunt or Andrew Napolitano's computer whenever they want. And that's the resistance they're getting from these internet service providers, and that's what this legislation, if enacted and signed by the president, would let them do.
Is it the sense that this might happen? Because that doesn't sound very American, does it?
No, it doesn't sound very American at all, and it would be an opportunity for extraordinary abuse that button was there, and the FBI was only supposed to press that button when it got a search warrant. The temptation to press that button at other times would be almost irresistible. It's hard for me to believe that the Senate will go along with this. There are strong elements in the House that would like almost anything the FBI wants. Look, the FBI got the Patriot Act, which lets them write their own search warrants when they're going to a third party, like a doctor or a lawyer or the post office that has records about you. Now they want to bypass the Fourth Amendment yet again. This is, again, we've talked about this so many times. It's the debate of the next 10 years. How much liberty will Americans give up in order to have safety? And by giving up liberty, do they even become safer?
The feds have been secretly recording the phone conversations of millions of us Americans and will continue to pull records for weeks. That's according to a new report in the British newspaper The Guardian. The House Intelligence Committee chairman says a domestic terror attack was stopped because of phone records collection. And now the White House is defending the practices. Here are the details. The Guardian reports that a federal security surveillance court ordered Verizon to hand over information on all of its phone calls that originate in the United States on an ongoing daily basis. According to the reporting of The Guardian, those records include phone numbers, times of calls, where they took place, but not the content of the calls. In other words, no wiretapping in this case. Civil liberties groups were very quick to condemn this report, but the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, the Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers, tells Fox News that program helped investigators prevent a terror attack on U.S. soil sometime in the last few years. And other lawmakers on both sides of the aisle told critics, calm down.
This is a program that's been in effect for 7 years, as I recall. It's a program that it's worked to prevent not all terrorism, but certainly vast majority of it.
I'm a Verizon customer. I don't mind Verizon turning over records to the government if the government's going to make sure that they try to match up a known terrorist phone with somebody in the United States.
It's stunning, isn't it? Fox News can't confirm the details of those classified court documents. The Guardian reports the court order took effect in late April and lasts through mid-July. Catherine Herridge is live in D.C. for us this afternoon. Catherine, what do we know about whether other phone companies, other cell carriers may have been affected by this?
Well, Chef, this court order authorizes the collection of so-called metadata that can be used to track a person's everyday habits and even the location where the calls were made. And on Capitol Hill during a previously scheduled hearing, Attorney General Eric Holder insisted Congress was not in the dark about the program, but there's little he can say publicly because it's highly classified.
With all due respect, Senator, I don't think this is an appropriate setting for me to discuss that issue. I'd be more than glad to come back in an appropriate setting to discuss the issues that you have raised.
Not addressing the specific case, Verizon told employees the law authorizes the federal courts to order a company to provide information in certain circumstances, and if they get one of those orders, they will comply. We heard from Sprint today that said they would not comment, and we're still waiting for a response from AT&T, but the ACLU says they believe other phone carriers are also subject to a similar order.
There's every reason to believe that the government has similar orders for other telephone companies, and perhaps even more troublingly, that it has similar orders for internet companies.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently perhaps collect, but not wittingly.
A recent Fox News investigation pushed the head of the National Security Agency to explain whether they would hold records of American citizens, and that idea was dismissed at the time as inconsistent with the NSA's mandate.
We don't hold data on U.S. citizens. Let me go back to the mission that NSA does. Foreign intelligence, with a focus on counterterrorism. That's our mission, is to protect this country from things like 9/11.
Senior members of Congress briefed on this program confirmed to reporters publicly that it's been going on for 7 years. Yet we had public statements to Congress within the last 4 months by the head of the U.S. intelligence community that the NSA never collects on American citizens. And those two statements cannot be reconciled, Shepard.
Everyone should just calm down and understand this isn't anything that is brand new. It's been going on for some 7 years, and we've tried often to try to make it better, and we'll continue to do that.
Harry Reid says, we should just calm down, Judge. This has been going on a long time. They've been able to stop some sort of terrorism, this, that, or the other thing. So just don't worry about it. Just relax, everybody.
See, the laws are really screwy here, Shep. The laws allow the executive branch, the president and his agents, to tell select members of Congress when they are doing things like that, but prohibits those members of Congress from telling the other members of Congress or the American people. Just because Harry Reid knew about this for 7 years and it's been going on for 7 years does not mean that it is constitutionally permissible. This is a fishing expedition on the grandest scale we've ever seen in American history. They are looking for a select group of people, and in order to find that select group of people, the Constitution says, present some evidence against them to a judge and you'll get a search warrant for their phones. Rather than doing that, they got a search warrant for 113 million phones.
That we know of.
That we know of. And they said to us, you know, don't worry.
It's fine.
Trust us. We're not listening to the calls. We're just keeping records of them. Who would trust them after this? The Constitution doesn't trust them. As Catherine Harris just pointed out, they lied under oath, this administration, when they were asked under oath, are you collecting information about American citizens? And Admiral Clapper, who's the head of all this, said, no, we're not.
Listen to Lindsey Graham. Senator Lindsey Graham, listen.
I'm a Verizon customer. I don't mind Verizon turning over records to the government if the government's going to make sure that they try to match up a known terrorist phone with somebody in the United States.
But that's not what they're doing.
No,
they're looking into all of our. All we know about is Verizon. That's the 100 and something million. There are other phone companies out there. Their records haven't leaked. Who are we to think they didn't do this with all of them? Of course we're to think that.
The whole purpose of the Fourth Amendment is to prevent the government from doing just this. It's to prevent it from interfering with the privacy rights of innocent people, a lot of innocent people, in order to find a few that may be planning something wrong. Nobody wants the wrong thing to happen. But the idea that we would sacrifice liberty in order to obtain safety is a canard. This is just a shortcut to make it easier for America's spies to spying on Americans. Shep, they spied on the West Wing. They spied on the Pentagon. They spied on the Supreme Court. They spied on the CIA. This is spies spying on spies. This is the most extraordinarily broad search warrant ever issued in the history of the federal courts of the United States.
They can do anything.
Under Senator Graham's logic, he'll be happy with it as long as they catch a few bad guys. Would it be easier for the government if the police could kick down any door they wanted and arrest any bad guy? Of course it would. But who would want to live in a society like that?
Can you hear me now? Because don't look now. Is this what Washington is doing to your rights right now? Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and who has that kind of ring these days? Anyway, if you are among the 121 million Verizon customers, the government is watching you and apparently listening in on you, or could, but certainly it has your records and does. A top-secret court order leaking to the press showing that the government is indeed monitoring calls, and it's not only Verizon customers who are furious.
That seems like an invasion of privacy.
There's no reason for them to know who I'm talking with.
Well, it doesn't make you feel comfortable. Big government's not a good thing.
It is a little bit invasive.
A little bit insecure. I wouldn't like the government having my information.
It's a violation of civil rights.
Critics say it's not just an overreach, it is unconstitutional to a guy who knows that document pretty well. Uber attorney and radio talk show host star Mark Levin. Mark, you've seen all of this go down. I've had the pleasure of listening to you of late, and you're worked up about this. I mean, and I haven't had your latest response to this. What do you make of all of this?
I'll tell you what I make of this. We have the elements of a police state here, and I'm not overstating it. When you step back and realize the Supreme Court the other day ruled 5-4 that law enforcement can take DNA from you even if you're arrested. And by the way, you're arrested when you're stopped for a speeding ticket. And Scalia was right, concerned about a national database. That goes way over the line of our traditions. You look at the Internal Revenue Service, what's going on there today, and they collect extensive financial and personal information. They put it on a database. This Obamacare is a massive data collection as well of our private, personal medical conditions, procedures, drugs, mental, physical illnesses. The Transportation Department, people forget, has proposed black boxes in all of our automobiles to track how they function and how far they go in accidents. We now have domestic drones from the EPA to make sure farmers aren't stepping out of line. The Department of Homeland Security now is checking laptops and iPhones and other data and making copies of it and keeping it. And now we have this. And some of my brothers and sisters in law enforcement, prosecutors, are saying, look, this is permitted. You know, we need to be able to go through a match phone. Wait a minute. You don't throw a whole net on the entire country and everybody's phone numbers and check the duration and see if you can come up with some overlaps. That's not law enforcement. That's not how national security works. I don't care what the hell the Supreme Court said 30 years ago or what some judge said 15 minutes ago. This is America, and our government's collecting way too damn much data on we, the private citizen.
Now, they did this under the auspices, I think, just tracing back to when this call came out to get these call records of these 110-plus million Americans, presumably right after the Boston terror incident. So that was the guise under which they requested and then demanded this information at Verizon that gave it to them. What did you make of using that event? And on paper, that would sound fine, I guess, but then to extend it to the degree they did.
That is about the dumbest defense that I've heard today, and I've heard it today on this from the administration and others. The Russians were begging us to get a hold of this guy, terrorist number one, the dead terrorist. They shared information with our domestic and intelligence operations. The Department of Homeland Security concludes we don't have enough to hold the guy. He goes back to his Chechnya neighborhood or thereabouts and comes back, and so now they're going to throw a net on 110, 120 million Americans to try and track this down? This is so absurd, and it is a pretext, and I don't like any of it, whether it comes to health care or taxes or Obamacare, transportation, everything. They are collecting way too much information, and as far as Obama, he doesn't know what's going on. Well, he knows what's going on right now, for God's sakes. What's he going to do about it? Anything?